doing out there in transition to normalcy land?
I am doing well. It is very, very good. I think we are live. I'm not sure. It says error loading. If you are live, leave a comment down there so we can see you. Let's just take a piece. Yep, it does. It looks like we're live. Here we are. So JP and I are going to chat a little bit about marriage, families, ministry. JP's going to talk a little bit about what he's doing with Communio. And I want anyone that has questions on things that you're facing in your parishes, especially in this crisis and this time of quarantine, leave a comment. We'd love to answer any questions you might have with creative solutions. I think JP is one of the most creative guys out there, so we'll come up with something good. So awesome. So first of all, thanks for taking a few minutes, JP, for joining Revive, and here we are. You're like the marriage guy, and I want you to talk a little bit about Communio. Specifically, why you guys were founded, what you do, and how you help parishes and churches.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. Well, Dan, Communio we're a nonprofit. We consult with churches. We're unique in that model that we consult with them, bringing them cutting-edge data tools and ministry strategies combined to help them facilitate healthy relationships for singles, for those who are married, those who are engaged, and those who are in marital crisis. And so we're born out of a bold philanthropic experiment that started at an organization called the Philanthropy Roundtable. We were trying to figure out what could be done at scale that could strengthen marriages and strengthen churches. We raised and spent about $20 million over a 3.5-year period to really test that, and we found a lot of things that don't work. We paid a lot of dumb taxes. I can tell you, made a lot of mistakes. But thanks be to God, we found some things that do work. We worked. One of our success stories was in Jacksonville, Florida, which is one of the cities we worked in, and worked with more than 50 churches through the Southern Baptist Convention, Catholic diocese there, and St. Augustine, and some of the largest community Bible churches, and moved more than 58,000 people through 4-hour or longer programming in that time period. And the divorce rate shrank by 24% over that period. And then also through that experiment, churches that we worked with grew. Attendance grew, and even regular giving grew. And so that's a little bit of Communio in a nutshell.
That's awesome. What, for those people out there that are, talk a little bit about how this divorce rate shrunk, a little bit what you guys did. And I've heard it before. I've seen a little bit of the white papers, but I'm always so fascinated especially when we're trying to figure out some very tangible things.
Yeah.
Because divorce is such a terrible thing, especially facing so many of our parishes and some of our friends even. What are some of the big takeaways that you learned from this $20 million invested in this project?
Well, all right. So big things is we started to recognize, and we began with this in mind, was that life changes most powerfully through relationship, through personal relationship. And we understood that churches are a latent powerhouse for forming life-changing relationships. And we also started to recognize that there's a lot of latent energy in terms of volunteers. If a volunteer knows that his time or her time can be spent effectively, and it won't be wasted, they're more likely to give of their time. So we started doing things like my old background. I worked in public policy, and I understood and helped develop some predictive analytic, the use of predictive analytics in that work, and said, what would it look like to bring it to churches? And so we started using it as a diagnostic for churches, and we were able to tell a church the number, be able to note that, for instance, 5,000. I'm going to make up a number here, but this is a real hypothetical. You'd say, I'd be able to see that there's 5,812 individuals who are struggling in their marriage right now within 5 miles of a parish.
Wow!
And being able to then give that information to the head of to the leadership team and say, let's go out and we can actually invite these people in, invite them in to a date night event, a fun activity at the church, and get them into what we would call a growth journey to begin becoming engaged in parish life and intercept them, so to speak, before their relationship continues to metastasize. So that was one of the big things that we did. It was also the assumption that content, this is a big thing that we believe, there's enough content to save the world. What I mean by that is end user, like a marriage course. There's great skills-based programs that exist for couples right now.
Sure.
You didn't have to spend any time trying to create new great skills-based content. That content wasn't catalytic. It usually sits on the bookshelves, a director's of religious education everywhere, or a pastor's bookshelf. And so how do you get it to the people who most need it? And so most of what we did over 3 years is truly try to get beyond what is, in normal parish life. You run a program, you get the same 12 daily communicants to show up, or, the people who are most engaged show up, but it's not getting to those who most need it. And so a lot of our work was focused on developing strategies and techniques to help churches get reach.
That's awesome. So it's a smarter, not harder kind of approach. And I agree with you. I remember when I worked at a parish, we would get, a box of somebody's kit or their resources, and they'd send it to us, and it was like a sample version. You get to watch the DVDs, and we had probably 20 or 30 catechetical programs, and you could watch them, and they're all good. I mean, they all had good stuff to them. Yeah. But it was always the question we would sit around the table is we'd say, well, how do you get the family and the kid who's in that family to come who doesn't come to Mass?
Yeah.
It's not about, it's one thing to get them into the room to watch the video, but it's those kids are typically already pretty Catholic, let's just say. But those families, those kids are on the fringes, or the ones who we might say in youth ministry are, at risk for leaving the church, the tough cases that are very, very important, the 99 that we try to catch out there, or the one who's out there, it's hard to get a hold of them. And so I've really loved, from a marketing background, you guys solve a problem I think that parishes and dioceses and ministers all have, is how do you actually reach the people who need what you have the most? Yeah. And how do you engage them? So that's awesome. What kind of work do you do with parishes now? What are some of the things that you're doing now? And then we'll get into the crisis in a second, but I want to hear a little bit more about what you're doing now.
Sure. So we have essentially now 3 different models. One is philanthropists sponsor us in a full citywide initiative. And so we do have big citywide initiatives getting started or already going in Billings, Montana, in the Permian Basin, which is West Texas, Midland, and Odessa, in Fort Worth, Texas, Tarrant County, and in Denver, Colorado, nearby you. And we work with, in those cities, we'll be working with Catholic and evangelical churches, helping them build what we would call a data-informed, full circle relationship ministry. That is sort of the widget, the framework for change that we bring to churches. I think I love being on a Catholic discussion. Our framework, you might think of it as being the form, and then the stuff that you put into it is the matter, right? And so as a consultancy, the data-informed full circle relationship ministry begins with helping you know what's going on in your parish, know what we find typically is in any given church between 1 in 4 and 1 in 6 people in the pews on any given Sunday are seriously struggling in their marriage right now.
Wow.
Okay. And then we can help the parish know more deeply their membership, and then the parish boundary, what's going on in the parish boundary. And then we sit down and we typically do a full day planning session.
Wow.
Where we unpack the data and then help the parish come up with their own plan, which includes first setting up goals, lag measures and lead measures, sort of big hairy goals for the marriage ministry and for attendance and growth, and then help them design a 12-month calendared battle plan. Sort of,
wow.
Okay, how do we run actually a strategy and get beyond just a once and done tactic where we do like a marriage retreat weekend or a 10-week program, like a real ongoing systematic strategy to grow participation in the parish and in the parish community. And then we're there. We support the parish. We provide all sorts of turnkey resources. We run and design Facebook campaigns. There's a campaign going on not far from your house, All Souls Parish in Denver. That one parish I just saw, been running it for about a week. There's been about 55 or so folks who've completed the date night kit.
Wow.
Of those, about 75% of them aren't members of the parish, from what we can tell. So it's a great way to find people who aren't already there.
Yeah.
And then we'll help a parish think through that ongoing strategy.
Yeah.
So you get ongoing engagement. And then the parish selects the content, right? So whether that means grabbing something like United in Love, United in Christ, which is a phenomenal Catholic marriage enrichment program, or another great one I see, the good folks from the Diocese of Owensboro here. There's a phenomenal program called Grace Marriage that was started not far from there that we're a big fan of because of its particular model. So we'll just help. We actually work with 34 content authors, publishers, and over 85 pieces of content, and help a parish think through what's right for them. Okay, and a Hispanic language parish a Spanish language side is going to be very different, both not only in language, as anybody listening here knows. There's also a cultural difference, that there's also essentially a cultural translation of these ideas that need to happen. So we'll work with the parish to navigate all of that.
That's awesome. We're going to get into some parish specific stuff in just a second, but I see there's over 25 people watching right now. I want you, if you work at a parish, if you currently have a marriage ministry paid staff member, I would love for you to write yes in the chat right now. If you don't currently have somebody, post a comment and say no. And when I say that, we're gonna get to some statistics. JP's got some data right now that he wants to share that we'll talk a little bit about on what, if you look at evangelicals and if you look at Catholics, there's some big differences in staffing. So if you work at a parish, yes, if you have a marriage ministry person full-time or even part-time, no, if you don't. I want to poll our audience, and maybe you guys work at some outlier parishes, but that's awesome. I love all of this. I mean, at heart, I've worked in marketing for a long time. JP is very humble, you guys. I'm going to tell you, Communio, I would say, is probably one of the most powerful tools out there that connects real people with parishes through technology. There are a lot of people that are making DVDs. There are a lot of people that are making these programs like we talked about. But again, the biggest challenge that parishes face is connecting the people to the content. And I think that's Communio's gift to the church. I think they could be used in every sort of ministry in the church, but marriage, I think, is the most important. And that's really, in couples, because, we were talking earlier before we went live about how so many parishes have a youth minister, and maybe you have a youth minister, but they don't have, a family minister, someone who's helping the adults. And when kids don't get to go to mass, why is it? It wasn't because they couldn't walk. It's because mom and dad didn't want to take them, or because, if kids are having to witness a fight or something from parents, that affects how they think about the church, and there's so many, well, are we going to get the kid baptized over here? There's a lot of things that come from marriage if this is the foundation. So have you guys seen a lot of, talk about some of the fruits that you've seen? I know this divorce thing is awesome, that you've. Yeah.
And I think, Dan, coming back to your point there is really important. And most parishes do have a youth ministry or CCD, right? That's sort of, if you have kids, you probably have some form of CCD. What we're seeing in the data is that if your parents' marriage has the biggest impact on whether or not you practice as an adult. We funded a study through the University of Texas to try to look at faith practice and family structure. And what we found was, obviously, baby boomers go to church more than Gen X, who go to church more than millennials, and the data is still new on Gen Z. But what we found was a millennial goes to church at the exact same rate as a boomer, if I know one thing about both people, and is if both grew up in an intact married home, they go to church at almost the exact same statistical rate. What's happened is family structure significantly changed between the generations. That's the widget that's fundamentally altered. And most parishes would say you'd have a CCD, or I think we found, we did a study with the Barna Group of Catholic parishes, evangelical churches, and mainline churches. And what we saw is 54% of Catholic parishes said that they pay somebody regularly to run their youth ministry. I think almost every parish would have a CCD of some sort. But just 15% of Catholic parishes would say that they have a staff member who at least has some portion of his time spent on marriage ministry.
Wow.
So, and in all, just 82% of Catholic parishes reported spending $0 annually on marriage ministry.
Wow.
So, and that's not actually far different. Evangelical churches reported 80%, and mainline churches reported spending 94%. 94% of mainline churches reported spending 0% on marriage. So this is a widespread challenge. I think a lot of things. The one thing that we do more of is some form of marriage preparation.
Sure.
But after, I mean, folks know I have a brother who's a Catholic pastor, and I would tell you, canon law says that a priest needs to go to an annual retreat or recollection.
Sure.
And we know faithfulness in that vocation requires some intentionality, significant intentionality.
Hard work.
And the parish, we're not really equipped to do that, and sometimes we get also demoralized when we do something and only 10 or 12 people show up, and we conclude that people don't want this or need it.
Sure. That's a great point. What I want to get into some practicals now.
Yeah.
What are some things, and I want you to talk a little bit how at the end of this on how people can learn more about Communio and see the toolkit.
Yeah.
But first of all, the crisis, right? I've realized pretty quickly. I've had conversations with a couple of friends, and they've said it's amazing. I've never spent more time with my wife and kids than I have in the past 6 months, and I think. What a beautiful gift. I mean, for me personally, it has been such a gift. My wife and I, thanks be to God, both work from home, and we did that before, so we get to spend a lot of time raising our son, but it's been very cool you get really intentional about it. And I thought, what an opportunity that we have in front of us. And I know parishes are starting to open again and masses are starting to start up again and things like that. But I think it's going to take a while to get back to normal, so to speak.
Yeah.
And this opportunity, I think, is this. We as a church have all of these families in front of us. We're having dinner together by force. We're watching movies together. We're watching, things like this. What are some things that parishes could do right now? And let's focus in on the adults, right? Yeah. What are some things right away that parishes watching could get started doing to helping out those couples? Okay,
so felt need is sort of the mother of effective outreach and evangelization, right? Keeping that in mind, we have to speak into what is needed so we can build a relationship. One of our reasons we call ourselves Communio is because we think community is at the core of effective evangelization and outreach, right? So, okay, one thing that a parish can do easily is host date nights, and whether it be at home right now. Mm-hmm. So we've spun up a bunch of free resources for parishes. So if you go to crisis.communio.org, we've got a host of, I think we have 6 date night kits that are available that any parish can grab and take. They're a mix of great comedians, there's a great time capsule that a couple can do together during COVID. This shutdown period, our team can help you grab that. If you wanted to have your own sort of branded parish landing page, which a lot of parishes and churches we're working with are using that, so we'll be able to at cost be able to put the parish logo and name on it. You get your own registration page, so you capture all of the people who come. Churches are using this and then emailing it out. We'll also help a parish do person-to-person texting. We'll help you run an outreach campaign just to those people you have mobile phones for, and we're going to help you at 3 cents a mobile. Find a mobile phone for those who you don't have.
Wow!
If we have your first name and your address, so we'll help you actually do create. So St. Michael's date night kit. Send it out. Looks like it's from St. Michael's. It is from St. Michael's, and you can start capturing, inviting folks in from your parish. And what we're finding is people who do these kits, they enjoy it and they email it to their friends.
Wow.
And then their friends jump into it. And then guess what? As a parish, you actually get the names and contact for the people who do it. And then you can invite them back to something else. We've actually designed a 90-day relationship ministry strategy that can all be done digitally, that bonds people with your parish, and you can use it to transition this period back into full-blown face-to-face life.
Yeah.
So we're happy to help you with that.
Awesome.
So there's some things there. I think.
Talk about the date night. I want to focus in on that because I know that that's one of the key. You know, some of the folks watching might say date night, restaurants are closed. What do you mean? Yeah. I want to just encourage everybody. This is such an innovative way of doing ministry that when I first saw it, I thought, wow, this, especially for millennials and younger families, these really critical families that we're trying to reach in our parishes, something like a date night is awesome. I want you to give me the picture of it a little.
Yeah. Okay. So we got to recognize that where I would love to be is to invite people to a multi-week lesson where they can deepen in their theological understanding of marriage, right? I would love to be able to give them the typological connections between Genesis, the Last Supper, and the book of Revelation, and weave that the tapestry together soteriologically and into the eschatology. But that's not where people are right now. We can't just do that as the outreach. So where they're at is a lot of times right now, folks are isolated. They don't have a lot of places to go and people to see.
Money is tight, I think, for a lot of people.
If life returned to normal tomorrow, you also have to recognize that, I have 8 kids. And so we graduated, my wife and I, from having, as parents, so we have built-in babysitters. And so I had the 15-year-old watch them and be reasonably assured that everyone will be, But people have kids under the age of 12, the state frowns on you leaving your kids alone for good reason. And so a lot of times in parish life, there isn't childcare provided for a gathering. We'll work with the parish to think through outreach and ongoing engagement that we help them think through babysitting and a fun night. So the date night, a digital date night kit is a great way for those parents, even after we return to normal, but especially now, to have a safety valve. So there's ideas for things to do with your kids. Then there's discussion. We have relationship ministry experts come up with ideas for discussion for a couple before, as you get started, recipe ideas of simple, basic staples to create a meal together. There's also different activities, like I said, a time capsule or other types of games that couples can do together, then move into sort of a short video. We have a variety of different Christian comedians and Protestant and Catholic comedians that have really great edifying ideas on marriage. And at the end of it, you spend 90 minutes, 2 hours together. And we had 80% of the people who completed it say that they recommend it to a friend, which is a really high customer referral score. So, and that's, thinking through as a parish how we can add value and speak into a felt need can give us a relationship that will allow us to keep forming them.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's our methodology begins with helping to form relationship around a felt need, and then help them design an ongoing 12-month, 24-month strategy to grow that engagement to more and more substantive activity and growth.
That's awesome. And just for people that are maybe tuning in right now, how much does it cost to get started doing this date night thing? If you want to send out a date night,
we've got, like I said, some free white labeled kits that a parish can grab. If you want, I would encourage you to think about using it as evangelization.
Yeah.
To track. So $200, you can get a branded kit.
Wow.
That has your own registration page. It's your own landing page. It's your own. You can share it and put it on your Facebook page. And we can help you run for an extra $100 to help you run a person-to-person texting campaign.
That's awesome.
If you want to run, a number of parishes are doing Facebook outreach. We actually create the creative, design the creative for you that's branded for you. We'll make the ad buy and then do optimization and report it back to you. And we do that at our cost for being able to do it. So there's a lot of ways that we can support a parish right now.
That's awesome. How we got connected, if folks are wondering, what does this have to do with Revive, I think when we first came up with this idea of Revive, we thought, how do we work smarter and not harder? The traditional world says you just have to go to conferences and read books and hire consultants. And we tried to say, okay, what if we created parish staff training online and brought it right to the parishes? And a lot of you have watched free courses or trials and things like that. And so, we're in this new technological space, I think, using technology for ministry. A lot of times I think we used to think of marketing on one side or communication and ministry on the other side, and they were kind of competing. It's always better to be real in person and not use technology. I think this crisis has really woken a lot of us up, and for me even as well, with seeing all of our schools going online, all of our parishes doing streaming masses, training, webinars, conferences. You've probably seen 30 webinars or online conferences this week. Everyone is doing a conference or a webinar. So it's cool to see parishes. I'm very proud of the church to see pastors and parishes and apostolates say, yes, we want to use technology to engage people. So I think, when we go back to normal, I don't like ever thinking like that. I think looking forward instead of going back, as we're looking forward to where the church needs to be, it doesn't mean we don't do in-person ministry. It means that we use technology to complement it and to accelerate it. And that was what really attracted me to a community when we started talking. It's using technology to help parishes and dioceses and apostolates really reach people.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. We have a couple more minutes here, about 5 more minutes. Any questions that folks have, ask them down there in the chat. We'd love to answer them and to think about, what's going on. JP, tell us what's coming next for Communio. What are you guys doing tomorrow? I know we have a webinar coming up tomorrow.
Yeah.
We sent out some information on that.
Some of you may be registered for. We've got a webinar with Helen Alvarez.
Who is she? Tell us a little bit about her.
Helen is, if you don't know, Helen is a globally recognized scholar on the family. She's a legal expert on family law internationally.
Wow.
She's a well-known feminist who's a supporter of the family. And she sits on a Vatican dicastery. She's one of a few women globally who sit on a Vatican dicastery. She's an advisor to the observer to the Holy See and at the United Nations. So she's really phenomenal. She formed the organization Women Speak for Themselves, which is a pro-life feminist organization. And she'll be talking about a good bit tomorrow about renewal at this time amidst this crisis and what can be done about it. Obviously, we think, Familiaris Consortio, John Paul II's document written in 1981 was on the family. Sort of the future of the world passing by way of the family is key for renewal in the church. But in a practical level, I think those ideas haven't trickled down to that individual parish level from a practical way. How do we minister to the core of the marriage? Isn't the children, it's the couple. And I think in a practical basis, most of what parishes do is focused on the children and not the couple. And so how do we get to in a practical way minister to that couple? Because if you do that well, then it's gonna really overflow into children who are real disciples.
It's awesome. We've got a link if you want to find more information in the Your Parish Matters Facebook group. So most of you, I'm sure, watching this are already members of that, but if you're not part of it, Your Parish Matters is the name of the Facebook group, and we've got a link there. You can click it and get registered. It's a free webinar. I know there are a lot of webinars out there, and for all you 30 people right now watching, you've got a lot of places you could go with your time on the internet. Like I said, I'm very proud to see people taking advantage of technology, but I know you're busy. And I know that you are doing a lot of things. Victor just asked, is this going to get sent out? Yes, we'll put a link to it in the Your Parish Matters Facebook group to this recording. And so you can get an idea. I've seen lots of good comments on the virtual date nights. People are saying they love seeing that. Somebody from the Family Life Office of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Owensboro, shout out to Kentucky. They said, have they heard from parishes are renewing the domestic church in this time? Any other best practices? There we go. From JP. So any other things besides these things that you've seen being successful?
Oh, before this crisis happened, we were helping parishes with different types of creative outreach events and gatherings. We ended up creating a catalog of about 40 different creative ideas to invite people in, both from the parish and then from the community. to engage couples creatively. We've done everything from drinking with the saints, if you're familiar with the book, just those kinds of creative ideas. But then in terms of, look, groups are key. I think content, we have to stop thinking about leading with content. People want content. They need the content for life change. Effective content should be skills-based, not lecture-based. Should be practicing the skills necessary to live a good marriage. But people they'll gravitate for the community. Okay, we have to understand that. And then by doing that, you can bring in the skills-based content. And so there's a lot of creative ways to deliver it. We're helping a parish think through developing virtual small groups at this time so that they can transition it into real life small groups when people feel comfortable getting together. And then by developing that groups model, the content becomes secondary. You can plug other content in an ongoing way, knowing that people come for the relationship and they'll stay because of how it changes them. Okay, that's just kind of a broad an important lesson that we've seen, especially last thing is our evangelical friends, because we're unique as a ministry working with Catholic and evangelical circles, are being certainly more naturally aggressive, and I mean that the best way possible to do outreach at this time, knowing that that people are hurting. We had one of our church clients is a large church in Tarrant, and they reported to us that April was their 4th highest giving month on record. And the senior pastor there said it was because they leaned in so heavily on marriage. That was their entire shutdown strategy was around marriage. We helped them with doing outreach. We helped them with doing both a date night resource and then following it up with skills-based ministry offerings for couples. And we've got a number of those. Go on to if you go crisis.communio.org, there's an ongoing engagement ideas there that will help parishes design and implement so that you can go from something less substantive into something more substantive and sort of retargeting those who've come to that first date night, and you get them to do something more meaty on the next time around.
That's awesome. When you were talking about this idea of getting people into community and groups first, it reminds me of something that we always talk about, in a lot of our courses, and we've said before, this idea that belonging leads to behaving. I think sometimes in the church, and I've said this 100 times, so if you've heard me say this, just tune out. But a lot of times we talk about behavior first, and we say you have to behave a certain way, and then you start belonging to a group. But naturally, you think of youth ministry, what's a great way to get teens to come to youth group? You have pizza, right? Or you have a fun game or something. And then once they start belonging, they meet friends, they get bonds, they start sharing with other people. Then you start talking about theology. But it's not the other way around. You don't say, come for how to defend your faith. Kids are like, is there going to be pizza? Same thing. It's true for parents and adults as well. We have to, this is psychology. I mean, this is just how God made us, is that we are made for community. And isn't it a beautiful thing? So I think one big tip that I would say, going in line with what you're saying, is the more we can engage people and helping them belong by saying, we know what you're going through. We know it's tough. We're on your team. We've got your back. We're all in this together. People like hearing that kind of thing instead of saying, 2 more days until we're back in church. Yeah. It's you're trying to help people belong and show empathy.
I would encourage parishes, if you're listening and you're working at a parish now, think beyond what you can do to take a step beyond our sacramentology. Like how can we go beyond the streaming mass? How can we go beyond the drive-in confession? How can we go beyond that direct and important? Obviously, the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith, but how do we get people to that point where they recognize that and accept that more? Exactly. And I was working with a pastor of the largest evangelical church in Odessa, Texas. So 3,100 people in a town of 150,000 people. So percentage-wise, a large statistical percentage of the population goes to his church. And when we were going through our full-day planning session in February with him, he something clicked for him, and he said, we already get this when we go to India. Like when we go to India, we bring the gospel. We start with water, food, clothing.
Yep.
We bring felt need. And when we're in the first world, we don't, we too often will lead with content, like come learn this.
Yeah.
And we know it wouldn't work in a developing nation. It doesn't work here either. We gotta, marriage ministry in many ways is the best front porch, because disproportionately there's a large number of folks who are in relationship and right now who are lonely. They are isolated. They may not have authentic good friends. They want to be able to hang out with people that they share values with. That's a normal human need, and parishes can speak to that, form the relationship, and get folks into transformation.
That's awesome. I am so excited to keep following what you guys are doing. We'll keep everybody updated. Again, crisis.communio.org. You can learn a little bit more. Lots of great tips on there. Lots of, again, if we keep doing the same thing we've always done, it's never going to work. You know, we keep wondering.
The webinar, that's right. Yeah. If anyone wants to join the webinar, it's not posted on that main page. So they can email us at questions@communio.org and we'll get them.
Great. Yep. And also in the Your Parish Matters Facebook group, you'll find a link right there and you can register. So JP, thank you so much for taking the time.
Dan, great to be with everybody.
Yeah. God bless you all.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.